Welcome to the Swishlist Podcast, where we talk all things basketball. Hosted by two brothers, Moses and Roman. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, welcome in. Swishlist Podcast, Season 2, Episode 7. We got a lot to talk about today. It's a solo episode for me. Roman isn't able to make it today, so I'm going to do my best to carry the team this time. But we got a lot to discuss. We got to talk about Draymond Green. We got to talk about Giannis and the game ball situation, the Clippers, the Bucks. We're going to discuss the trade rumors. That's right. We're already at trade rumor season this early. A lot to break down, but let's begin by focusing on Draymond Green. Tell me if you've heard this before. Draymond Green suspended for punching a player. I know, it doesn't really come as a surprise. If anybody doesn't know what happened, Draymond got into an altercation with Jusuf Nurkic. He swung with his back turned, ended up catching Nurkic in the head, and was ejected, of course, and has been suspended indefinitely by the NBA. Not really a surprise here. And you hear the words from Steve Kerr after the game where he's talking about the guy that choked Gobert, punched Nurkic, punched a teammate. That's the guy that needs help. And there's been some finger pointing at Steph Curry, whether or not Steph's a decent leader, and the Warriors have kind of gone back and forth on that. At the end of the day, I really have a couple questions. The first is, why did Golden State feel like they needed to give Draymond another contract? Bob Myers, I think, got out because he could see the writing on the wall here. And this doesn't really come as a surprise to anybody that's a basketball fan. So this shouldn't have been a surprise to the Warriors. Why did they pay him again? Well, Steph has made it clear that he wants to play with Klay Thompson. He wants to play with Draymond Green, and Steph is still that guy, but the other two are not. And they're not going to be. At this point, they're not turning back the clock. Draymond's the kind of guy that you play pickup with. He's recovered from a few injuries, and now when you blow by him, he just fouls you. I played my dad one-on-one once when I was a kid. He only played me a couple times. I think I was a freshman when I was getting close, really, really close to beating him. And we reached a point where when I would drive to the hoop, he would just foul me. Hard foul. Forearm shiver to the chest. And then he'd give me the ball and he'd say, check up, right? He knew what was coming. This is the same thing with Draymond Green. Like, he has to become this over-the-top enforcer. He has to play the game trying to put fear in the hearts of these opposing players, because that's really all that he's got left. You know, he's not really a shooter anymore. The league's caught up to the offense that the Warriors run. They're not even a great shooting team really anymore. They don't scare anybody. And so this is what we get. Tensions are running hot. This is a team that hasn't lost like this in years and years and years. So they're falling apart at the seams. And normally when stuff like this happens, you see the worst of people. And this has been the worst of Draymond Green. If I'm the Warriors, I'm saying, look, Steph, it's time. We got to break up the group. It just doesn't make sense for us to keep it going anymore. I mean, this is a team that's 11-14. They're the 11 seed right now in the West. It's bad. It's time to move on. Draymond, indefinite suspension. I would assume it's probably going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 games. He's going to come back and say he did counseling. Maybe he's going to do the Ja Morant special. Genuinely, I don't wish ill will on anybody, so I hope he bounces back. But do we really think this is the last time we're going to see something like this from Draymond Green? I don't believe that he's a Hall of Famer. A lot of this stuff's the reason why he makes non-basketball plays and if that's something that we're going to pull into his basketball resume, it doesn't make sense to me, but everybody makes it into the Hall of Fame, so I guess I wouldn't be surprised. But that's what we're seeing from Draymond. Moving on, we've got Giannis in a scuffle with the Pacers over a game ball, trying to figure out why. Well, let's look at the timeline of what's happened. The Pacers are an up-and-coming franchise, right? They've got Tyrese Halliburton, young players, hungry players, trying to find their way to the top of the standings. And when we look at the Eastern Conference, I've got it pulled up right here. They're the 7th seed, about what we'd expect from the Pacers on their trajectory. But they played the Bucks in the semifinals of the in-season tournament. They won that game. Tyrese Halliburton did the Damian Lillard, Dame time, pointed at the watch. So there was some bad blood here already. Tensions were a little bit high. Well, they end up seeing each other after the in-season tournament. And guess what happens? Giannis shoots more free throws than the entire Pacers roster. He ends up going for a franchise record, over 60 points. And after the game, there's a little scuffle about what happened to the game ball. Reason why? The Pacers, their rookie, scored his first NBA point, and they gave him the game ball. Newsflash, he actually scored in the in-season tournament championship game, but that game doesn't count as far as NBA records are concerned. So they thought, rookie needs to get the game ball. It's a known thing around the league. They talked with the Bucks staff, got the ball, gave it to him. Giannis loses his mind, comes out running, freaking out. And this was a game where he kind of took some hard fouls. By the end of the game, you see Thanasis on the bench just kind of freaking out, just classic NBA theatrics. But like I said, tensions were high. And what's funny to me is after all of that, right? And they're asking Giannis, and he says he ends up with the ball. He got in Halliburton's face. The GM got elbowed, whatever. And he says, I don't think this is the game ball. I'm going to send it to my mom for sure. So he got into that big of a fight to not even keep the ball. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're going to fight like that to not even keep the ball? Like, does that make sense? That's what we're doing now? Giannis has got a lot of time in front of him. That rookie, he's never going to score his first point again. I don't think that it should have escalated to this point. The Pacers were the road team, and normally in NBA games, there are multiple game balls. They could have sorted this out pretty easily. I don't think it needed to come to this. And Giannis, you know what? Go score 65. Go score 65. If you look at the shot chart, he missed his three-point shots at the top of the key, got all his buckets in the paint, literally all his buckets in the paint and at the free throw line. So very interesting game, kind of an interesting fight. I think this is just this is who Giannis is now. He's bigger than everybody. He's stronger than everybody. And he's not the wonder boy that he was when he first came into the league. He's really trying to make it happen. He strong-armed the Bucks into getting Damian Lillard. He's strong-arming other teams if they think they can punk him. He's just not somebody that you can really punk anymore. So, Milwaukee, they've been my team from the very beginning. They're who I picked to win the championship this season. I told everybody when they got Damian Lillard that it's going to take some time for everything to mesh and to gel. Well, now when you look at the standings, a 4-game win streak, 19-7 on the season, the 2 seed in the East, and the 3 seed overall in terms of NBA records. So they're back 14-2 at home, 5-5 on the road. 14-2 at home, that'll get it done, especially when you're that high of a seed. So very excited to see the Bucks playing exactly where I thought they would. Moving on to a preseason favorite, the Phoenix Suns. Last week, I talked about how the biggest thing that we wanted to see from Phoenix, if it was going to work, if they were going to make a run, was we needed to see their big three get games played together. We needed to see them get some games under their belt to figure out who's shooting the ball when, to work through the minutia. Well, here we are, 4 minutes into the game? Bradley Beal, ankle injury, out yet again. This is exactly what we expected from Phoenix. And this isn't to say that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker can't win games. Oh, they win games. They win some games. But the problem is the way their roster's constructed, when it's only those 2 guys, and heaven forbid one of them takes a night off, they're 13-12. 4-6 in their last 10. The 10 seed in the West. It's not good. You got to have your full big three or it doesn't work. It's sad to see. But that really is what you can expect from the Suns. This is not a team that you want to play in the playoffs, right? If somehow Minnesota or OKC's there at the end, the 1 seed, 2 seed, and we're looking at playoff seeding, and Phoenix is hovering near the bottom, that's not a team you want to play. You don't want to go up against those guys. And we'll see. There's a lot of season to be played, but what the difference maker will be this season for the Phoenix Suns is how many games does their big three play together. And I told you, and I'll tell you again, I want to see 25 minimum games for that big three. I think if they play any less than that, not a chance they could win a title, especially in the West. Speaking of super teams, the Clippers. Everybody wanted to dog on the Clippers. I didn't. When they made the acquisition for James Harden, we knew it wasn't going to make sense right away. Trying to figure out that with Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and they already had solid bench pieces and figuring out the rosters. But guess what? Ty Lue, he's kind of a good coach. Let's look at some of his decision making. PJ Tucker, that guy's not even playing anymore. He's complaining. But are you really surprised? Would you want PJ on the floor to play some hard defense and miss corner threes? I wouldn't. And guess what? The Clippers right now, the 6th seed, okay, sure, not great, but they've won 7 straight games. That's right. They're turning it around. It's starting to make sense. And are you hearing about the Clippers in the media? You're not. Because the only narrative the media wants to tell you is that the Clippers they're not going to do it. It's not going to work. It doesn't fit. So when they win these games, we just don't talk about them. Not here. I'm here to let you know this is exactly what we expected from the Clippers. It was going to take some time. But guess what? They're real. It's serious. And when their players are playing, this is what you can expect. Sure, a couple of these guys are past their prime. We don't know if they're going to be healthy at the end because year after year, we've seen something happen to Kawhi or something happen to Paul George. So enjoy this moment now where they're winning games because the Clippers genuinely have the potential to do something special. And they've got the players at the positions to rival a team like Denver deep in the playoffs. And that's what we want to see. I've talked a lot about the standings. I specifically want to look at the West. As I was prepping for this episode and looking through NBA news and who's what where, something stood out to me. It was the top 5 teams in the West. The Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Mavericks, the Nuggets, and the Kings. Most of those teams I've listed over the past decade have been terrible. Genuinely not good or at best mediocre. Denver, of course, coming off of a championship. But I believe that what we're seeing in the West is a change of hand as far as a transition in this league. It's time. The young guys are here. Anthony Edwards is getting it done. So's SGA. Luka is making it happen. Jokic is solidified as an all-time player. And the Kings have been resurrected from the dead coming back from last season. That's right, light the beam. Oh, hold on a second. We still talk about LeBron and Steph and KD. LeBron, AD, they're the 8 seed. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, the 10 seed. And Steph Curry, the 11 seed. It's finally happened. The players of the past 10 years, the greats, the Hall of Famers, they can still score 30 a night if they want to. They can still give you 25, 7, and 7. But the difference is that doesn't lead to wins like it did before. That's the biggest difference, right? If we want to talk about stats, all those guys can still get you stats, but it doesn't lead to wins. Look at the West, the top 5 teams, all teams with young stars, all teams with a bright future. I mean, the Timberwolves are 11-1 at home, guys. 11-1, 8-2 in their last 10. I mean, good grief. And have you seen the Thunder? Did you see SGA hit a game winner? Go and check his Instagram right now. Go read the caption on the post. This guy's electric. Luka Doncic, we've already seen what this guy can do. Now, I know you're probably saying, Mo, you've told us you're not a Luka supporter. I'm not. I genuinely believe he's overrated. But the fact of the matter is, he's got the Mavericks with Kyrie Irving as the 3 seed. The Nuggets, the 4 seed. Down year for them, but they can still figure it out. The Kings, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. And what we expected was when this happened, there would be a major drop-off, that all of a sudden fans wouldn't be here. Nobody would be watching the NBA. And I do believe there's a lot they need to figure out in terms of viewership especially in the regular season. Who's actually the face of the league? Who does it make sense to kind of hand the reins to? As long as LeBron's in this league, Steph and KD, there's going to be a lot of hype around those players, and rightfully so. But when you're talking about the top players that lead to wins, wow, it happened. We've already seen the change of hand. Now in the East, it's a lot of the players that came in during the primes of the LeBron, KD, and Steph, right? Jason Tatum, he's been in the league for quite some time. Jaylen Brown, same thing. Giannis, he's been around for a minute. Joel Embiid, same thing. Now, of course, the Magic, young team, up and comers. But what we're really seeing here is the young players are dominating the West, and it's the players in the middle of their prime dominating the East. Special time to be an NBA fan. Special time. Enjoy the greats while you still can, because I'll tell you what, you need to watch them during the 82 games, because it doesn't really look like they're gonna be going on deep playoff runs. I'm looking at Minnesota, and I'll tell you what, man, there's nothing that I'm more impressed with than those guys. Rick Carlisle talked about how that team is legit, how things genuinely feel different in Minnesota. And you can point to Anthony Edwards as the main reason why, because they've had number one picks. Cat didn't get it done. He wasn't that guy, right? When they had D'Lo and Cat and all these players, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Anthony Edwards does it. We told you he was going to be a top 3 shooting guard in the league this year. You might as well just stamp him as number 1, because he's playing that good every single night. I don't know if there's a franchise that deserves it more than Minnesota. I'm genuinely happy for them. And when I look at the 2 seed Oklahoma City, I can tell you what's going to happen to the Thunder. The Thunder are going to go to the playoffs. They're going to be a top seed, somewhere in that 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 range. They're probably going to get bounced in the first or second round. And what we need to do is have a conversation with Sam Presti and say, guess what, Sam? It's time. Make the big move. Get the veteran guy. We need some vets in there to help show these players how to win when it matters most. Because the Oklahoma City Thunder, it seems like they've figured out how to win in the regular season. Exciting, special, something this team has done in the past when we saw their previous big 3. But what allows them to get over the hump? It's probably identifying some quality veterans to support this team and take them to the next level. So Sam Presti, I don't think this trade deadline's the time, but when you lose in the playoffs, can play this back. Make the move. Make the big move. What are we going to do with all these first round draft picks if we don't make the move? All right. Speaking of trades, that's right. It's some people's favorite time of the year. The NBA trade deadline, talks, rumors, they've begun. There's one player that's leading all of those conversations, and it's Zach LaVine. The Chicago Bulls are a mess. They're a complete disaster. Right now, 10-17, 3-10 on the road, and 500 at home. They thought they were going to be for real, and they're for really bad. So now the conversation is, who is in the Zach LaVine sweepstakes? Where are we actually going to see Zach LaVine play? Now, he's a California guy, played at UCLA back in college, didn't want to get drafted by Minnesota, ended up there when he didn't want to be, bounced around a bit in Chicago, great scorer, not a great winner. Has been linked to the Lakers now for what feels like about a year and a half. And so what do we actually expect the Lakers to do as far as the trade deadline is concerned? Well, I think you have to start by asking yourself this question. What are the Lakers? You know, what are they? Like, truthfully, what are we supposed to expect from this franchise? Like, they won the in-season tournament. Fantastic. When Anthony Davis plays and is dominant, they win games, but they're up and down. I mean, they win an in-season tournament, and then they lose to the Spurs. Wow, awful. Lakers are now being listed as one of the top teams to land Draymond Green in a trade scenario. Scary. Not somebody you want to be linked to. So when I look at the Lakers, I think we have to enter the acceptance phase of LeBron James. When Kobe Bryant was late in his career, especially Achilles tear, post Achilles tear, we knew that he could still score the ball, but we also knew the Lakers weren't going to win anything. Like that team wasn't going to win. We got to stop expecting LeBron James or heaping expectations on this man. I mean, nobody at this stage of their career has really been able to be in the conversation of a championship, right? So if you're the Lakers, what are you actually trying to accomplish? Who would you really want to pick up? Now, I think a Zach LaVine trade would be great. But if you look at the history of trades dating back to last season, we saw the Lakers try to get a big name player in Russell Westbrook. Disaster, abject disaster. And I think Zach LaVine's a better fit with this team. But when they went out to get the big guy, it didn't work. When we saw them make the micro trades, the Jared Vanderbilts and all the smaller pieces that they put together, they ended up making a run to the Western Conference Finals. So there's probably a higher likelihood that you see a Rob Pelinka make a trade for an Alex Caruso than a Zach LaVine. Maybe if you can package those players, it would be fantastic. I'm not sure if that's realistic, but what are the Lakers? Like, what are they actually able to accomplish? With the Zach LaVine, sure, I think they can get back to a conference finals, maybe, but Zach hasn't won anything. He hasn't contributed to wins. When AD's the number one option, this team's a roller coaster. So surrounding LeBron with pieces like you're going to make a run, it's just not realistic. This isn't year 15. We're in the 20s. I don't know where Zach LaVine ends up, but if he goes to the Lakers, it doesn't change my opinion on whether or not they're able to make a run to the finals. Now, another team that's in trade rumors quite a bit. Once again, the Raptors are there. OG Anunoby, former Raptor, Chicago Bull now. DeMar DeRozan has been linked to trades as well. But when you're looking at the Raptors, Pascal Siakam looks like he's on the table to be moved. It's time for the Raptors really just blow it up. Blow it up. It's done. You won your championship. Move on. Get the players out. Get them into some places and some spots that they might feel more comfortable. But it's time. So blow it up. If there's two teams that need to just kind of nuke the roster, it's Toronto and Chicago. Hopefully this year they actually do it. And I saw something right before I went live for the episode, and it was that the Mavericks are the number one option to land Draymond Green. Gosh, what are we doing? Wouldn't touch that guy with a 10-foot pole. Kyrie's enough. I mean, come on. No trade value whatsoever. You'd have to pay me to take that guy. Okay, we said this last week, but genuinely, I think the Swishlist Podcast, one of the things we do is we try to make sure we give coverage to a lot of the teams the media won't talk about. And we're looking at the dregs of the NBA, if you will. A couple of those teams we've talked a lot about have been the Pistons and the Spurs, specifically teams literally at the bottom. Hard to feel like they have hope. One team we haven't discussed, the Washington Wizards. My goodness, 4-20 is awful. 2-8 at home and 2-12 on the road. And it made me think, if I was going to start bench cut the Pistons, the Spurs, and the Wizards in terms of long-term viability, I go back and forth on Popovich in terms of coaching, just based on what we've seen since Tim Duncan's retired. I've said this multiple times. It feels a lot like Bill Belichick, that the Popovich Bill Belichick parallels are uncanny, kind of scary. But with that being said, if I'm going to start bench cut these teams, I'm starting the Spurs, I'm benching the Pistons, and I'm cutting the Wizards. Yeah, the Wizards feel like a tire fire, and one that there's really no light at the end of the tunnel, right? You just got Jordan Poole. He's paid all this money, years left, guaranteed, pairing him with Kyle Kuzma, and it's been a disaster. Not even close. The only highlights you see coming out of the Wizards are Kyle Kuzma trying to throw the ball off the backboard and falling, or Jordan Poole slipping on the court. Nothing good coming out of that franchise. And there's some bad teams that just don't get any media coverage. But the Wizards are bad, and people get to see it on what feels like a nightly basis. What a terrible spot to be right now. I'm hopeful in the young teams. I believe Wemby has star potential. And moving him from power forward to center, we've seen a spike in his performance. It's great. It's awesome. Popovich finally making some adjustments. And we've talked at the Sohan one. How about we make that one next? So I feel the best about the Spurs just because it's purely based on Wemby's potential. Next, it's the Pistons because they're young. I don't know what more to say than that. Jalen Duren, young player. Cade, young. They're rookies from this year. Just they've got a young core. I think there's growth that can be seen there. But the Wizards, I mean, Kuzma's been around for a minute. Same with Jordan Poole. Neither feel like leaders. It's not like you got a group of young guys where they're kind of going through it together. The Wizards just feel awful. And this is when you know it's bad. I want you to think for a minute. Close your eyes if you have to. Can you name the Wizards starters? If you can't, that's the sign that it's a disaster. When you don't even know 3 out of the 5 starters, wow, what are you doing? You're not putting anything productive on the basketball floor. It's time. Well, you would want to say it's time to blow it up, but I don't even know if they can. I don't even know where they go from here. They hit on John Wall and Bradley Beal, and it's been downhill ever since. Unbelievable. All right. On a brighter note, let's get to player of the week. There's only one player we could really choose here, right? In today's NBA and the way that the game is played, there's only one player we could really pick. That's Keegan Murray. I don't know how many Sacramento Kings games you've seen this season, or if you track Keegan's year last year when he broke the rookie record for 3-pointers. But this guy shoots the ball at an elite level. He went 12 for 13 from the 3-point line. I mean, I can't even do that wide open. I can't even do that if I'm getting up shots in the gym. Keegan Murray did it in an NBA game. Contested threes. These weren't all easy. It was just his night. I'm disappointed that Sacramento didn't let him, see if he could get to 15, maybe 16. But sportsmanship is a thing. If it was an in-season tournament game, he would have been lighting them up. But Keegan Murray, shout out to you, man. Incredible game, incredible performance. Player of the week honors. Fantastic to see. And with that, that's pretty much everything we had to cover today. I know, kind of a weird episode. I feel like Skip Bayless when he lost Shannon Sharp. I'm just standing up here by myself. But we're trying to deliver some quality content for you and some topics that make sense with the NBA news and what's happening around the league. Christmas games are almost here. And for those of you that maybe don't watch the NBA too much, Christmas Day is normally what we call the start of the real NBA season. It's where you get to see the best teams play each other on a day that everybody's enjoying themselves and, the holidays, a lot of marquee players in marquee positions. Some guys really that it gives them a chance to put themselves on the map. I remember the Derrick Rose games that we got to watch on Christmas Day. And when it was the Heat playing the Knicks and with Carmelo and LeBron and Wade, it's a fun time, and it signifies the true beginning of the NBA season. We also have a lot of the newly signed players. They're now eligible for trades. So you're going to start to see some teams make some moves at the turn of the new year. This weekend, of course, is Christmas Eve. Christmas Day is on Monday. So we're probably going to be taking a break as far as putting out an episode. Next week, the week following is going to be New Year's. A little bit easier on that side, but just wanted to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to listen and share these moments with us at the Swishlist Podcast. For myself and Roman, we're on every platform. So follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there as well. And please, this Christmas, share this podcast with somebody that could use some basketball knowledge in their life. And it probably wouldn't be right if I ended this podcast without doing Roman's classic sign off. If you're not following the podcast, it's getting ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. Once again, thank you so much for being here. That's it for episode 7, Swishlist Podcast. We are out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Swishlist Podcast. Catch us on social, and we'll see you next week.